Today I finally watched Possession. This is one I've been wanting to see for a while. It's considered a cult classic. It's known by those who seek this kind of thing out. Relatively unknown in the mainstream still. It's from 1981. One of the earlier Sam Neill movies. Starring Sam Neill. Made by a director who hasn't done any other film in English. It's filmed in West Germany, or West Berlin, actually. Features the Berlin Wall in the background of many scenes as an impressive visual. This is art. This is true cinematic art. There are some incredible shots in this movie. Some just beautiful cinematography. Spectacular acting by both main actors in this movie. Sam Neill does this twitchy movement. He rarely sits still. When he's talking to people, he'll like swivel his chair around like this the entire time. He'll get into these fits of mania where he'll rock back and forth in a rocking chair, and he'll rock so far back you swear he's gonna fall, but he doesn't break concentration and he keeps going. He pulls this off incredibly well, and the female lead, I'm blanking on her name. I'm sorry, but she is incredible in this movie. I mean, the range of emotions that she goes through and the height that she takes them to. The most iconic scene in this movie, and a scene even if you don't know this movie, have never heard of this movie, there's a chance you've at least seen images of this particular scene. It's known as the miscarriage scene. She's walking down this like subway corridor, and has this manic episode, this fit. She starts crawling along the side of the wall and just screaming and freaking out. And this entire thing is all one single take. It is one continuous shot, and it loops around, and it circles her, and it changes, and it follows her, and she does all this, and she puts her all into this scene. There are times I swear, I would be surprised if she got through filming without a concussion, because she was flailing her head right up against a brick wall. And it all culminates in this scene where she claims she miscarries, but she's literally just bleeding and oozing through every orifice. There's blood dripping down. There's so much that happens in this movie that I'm sure it's symbolic of something, but it's still not quite explained, and it's a movie that needs to be seen more than once, which is why I'm glad I actually bought a copy of this and not just used a streaming service like I've been doing for some of these movies. And it's not an easy movie to track down. I had to get a Region 2 DVD, and it's not that good a quality. But at least it's the complete uncut version, because there's one version that's circulating around that's missing like 30 minutes of the movie, and it's all chopped up into some bizarre order that makes even less sense than the true version, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense anyway. I'm afraid I'm going to start rambling if I keep talking about it, but there's just so much to this movie to love, and so much that I need other people to discuss it with, because I cannot explain this on my own. So I've said this a lot this month, but if you get a chance to see this, please do not pass it up. It is absolutely worth your time. So today there was another special screening at the Art House. House. or Hausu. This is one I've seen before, but it's been a while, and oh, this is one that must be seen. It's labeled horror and it has horror elements, but it's not scary. If there's anybody out there watching who doesn't like horror movies, I don't know why you're watching this video, but I would still strongly suggest you see this one. Uh, I don't even really want to give much away. I know it's a movie from 1977, but it's still so relatively unknown. I mean, it's cult classics, cult status, but you just gotta see it. You gotta see it, and you gotta go in knowing as little as possible. That's how I saw it the first time. I saw it the first time not knowing anything about it. I knew there was something weird going on, a group of Japanese girls, something about a killer piano. That's all I knew. And that's all I needed to know. It may be a little difficult to track down, but if you can find a copy, watch it. For a little more detail, this is considered the spoiler section, and I'm actually going to put a legit timestamp here. I forgot last week. Sorry about that. This movie is batshit. It is one of the weirdest movies that I have ever seen, and I've seen Hodorowski. It is incredible. A group of Japanese schoolgirls all embodying the most one-dimensional traits of anime characters, and all with nicknames that symbolize their very specific character role. There's Gorgeous, Fantasy, Prof, Mac, Kung Fu, and Sweet. These are the names of the characters. These are what they call themselves, call each other. There's the beautiful one. There's the one who's into fantasy stuff, who's always imagining things. There's the one who knows martial arts. There's the smart one. There's the fat one, although fat by Japanese girl standards, which is like not fat at all. Oh, and Melody. There was Melody, and she's the one who plays music. Because they. Now this is all done on purpose. It's purposely bad, and there's so many things like the use of matte paintings for backdrops that are just overly obviously fake. Fake skies, absurd color. Really, on the surface, lazy looking editing. To draw your attention to something, they literally just do a vignette over it rather than, film it. It's designed to look very cheaply made. But as I said, that's by design. All of these elements add up into something that is greater than the sum of its parts. All of these seemingly poor choices combine into this mindfuck of a movie that even in this spoiler section, there is really no way to adequately describe to you. This is a movie whose filmmaker essentially threw all the tropes of all genres at the wall. There are elements of melodrama, there are elements of comedy, there are elements of action. Overall, it's considered a horror movie. But it's more of an exploration of the basic elements that make genres what they are. And what happens if you were to combine all of them. Specifically, all the worst traits of all these genres. Okay, so I've watched some really good movies this week. So, of course, I had to balance that out with something really bad. It's called House Shark. And the really sad thing is, I helped fund this movie. I backed it on Indiegogo and got a VHS copy in a really attractive clamshell. I like the novelty of this more than anything else. The movie itself, look, this is one of those movies that only the most die-hard B-movie lovers would watch. The only people who would seek this movie out are freaks like myself who who actively seek out the worst movies that you can find. Or people who are obsessed with shark movies and will literally watch anything. Now that said, it has its moments. It has a niche audience. There is a market for this kind of thing. It has a 6.5 on IMDb, which is not bad for a movie of this nature. Especially given that its budget was, maybe there was a higher budget, but it only earned about $21,000 on Indiegogo, which is not a lot. So they did quite a lot with very little. And there are moments in the writing, in the performance, you can tell that everyone's having a good time. Everyone involved is having fun. They know it's ridiculous. They know it's really bad. And they don't care. Because that's kind of the point. There are some really interesting homages to other movies. The whole thing is a Jaws parody, including ridiculous parody versions of many of the lines and situations from the original. The more I talk about it, the more I almost want to recommend it. But thinking back on it, there's so many moments, so many of the jokes in this movie didn't make me laugh. They made me go, really? You thought that was funny? But then there were little moments that would make me laugh, like when the Quint character tries to do the nails on the chalkboard thing. He tries to interrupt a conversation by scratching his nails across a countertop. And it makes no noise, and he can't do it, and it's just really awkward. And everybody just kind of looks at each other like, what are you doing? That made me laugh. I enjoyed that.
Who in the son of hell threw penis on me?
Maybe it was the house shark.
Unfortunately, I can't give this movie a full rating because I honestly don't know how it ends. My VHS is incomplete. The movie literally cuts out at 1 hour and 20 minutes. There is no ending. I'm sure the DVD version is fine, but I went for this, and there must have been some mistake, some hiccup in the recording process that the tape just wasn't long enough. I contacted the owner, the founder of the project, but this movie came out a while ago. I've been sitting on it, haven't watched it until now. So, it's no big deal, honestly. I'm not upset with anybody about this. But, who knows? Maybe in the future, if they replace my copy, I can give you a more in-depth review when I know the ending. So after House Shark, I wanted to go a little further back in time to even when a movie was bad, it was still shot on film and it had a grain to it and just feels better. I found a random movie in one of these, multi-collection DVDs that you can pick up for $5 here and there. And this was one from 1981 called Bloodtide. And I chose that one out of the 5 movies on this disc because it had James Earl Jones in it. So I figured, hey, it should be worth a watch. I'm not disappointed that I chose it, but overall it was rather boring. It didn't have a whole lot going for it. James Earl Jones did deliver a pretty interesting performance. He had a much larger role than I expected. A lot of times when they throw a big name onto one of these cheapo DVDs, it's usually like they had a cameo somewhere and they're billing them as, top. But no, he was pretty much the main character of the whole thing. Um, and he held a commanding screen presence as he does. It was right around the same time that he did Othello with Christopher Plummer. And so when you first meet him in this movie, he is quoting Othello.
Rude am I in my speech, and little blessed with the soft phrase of peace.
And there's even a throwaway line that somebody says, oh, he got to play Othello in high school and he's never gotten over it. So that was kind of funny. And of course, his lines are great because he can do that role. It's perfect. As far as the movie goes, it was about some ancient beast on a Greek island that got awoken, uh, relating to rituals, ancient rituals performed, and for some reason, like every single native on this island, the second the beast woke up, they all knew. They all knew exactly what it was and what they had to do. Okay, beast is awake. We got to start sacrificing people. It's like, okay, this is just instinctive, I guess. The beast attacks one time, that we see anyway. The second time it attacks is the only time we actually see it. And it's not a good design. It looks kind of like a camel, actually. And we only see it for a few, brief seconds. And the first reveal is an hour into this 80-minute movie. Seems like they didn't have a whole lot of confidence in their creature. Overall, there's nothing wrong with this movie. It's just there's not a whole lot there. It would be a fine movie to play on TV, midday, late October, one of those movie channels that just plays random things. It'd be a curiosity, and you might even get sucked into it and stick around through the commercials to watch it. But I don't see anybody seeking this out unless they're diehard James Earl Jones fans and really want to see him perform Othello shirtless. So I just watched another 70s Satan cult movie. Like I said, they are a genre unto themselves. This one's from 71. It's called The Brotherhood of Satan. I've actually seen this one before, but only once. It was a while ago. So I wanted to revisit it, because I remember really enjoying this one. And yeah, it held true. It's clever. It's a bit different than some. It didn't rely on the melting effects that the Devil's Rain did. This one was a lot lower budget. It kind of felt like a TV movie, which, given that the director pretty much exclusively did TV shows, that makes sense. But that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be like a TV movie when it's done well. It was rated PG for a horror movie about Satan. That's odd. But again, they didn't need to rely on gore effects. They did it differently. The movie centers around this desert town. It's always a desert town with these Satan movies. Weird things are happening. They haven't had any visitors for a long time. Children are disappearing. Unexplainable stuff. It's almost like no one can actually get in from the outside. And no one can leave either. And so it turns out that all the old people in town are actually a coven of Satanists, and they've been hypnotizing and kidnapping children so that they can transfer their souls into the young bodies and live another lifetime. It's actually pretty clever. And all the kills that there are kills because sometimes they have to kill the parents to get the kids away. All the kills are done using children's toys in different ways. The opening scene of the movie, the very first shot, is of a toy tank, and then it cuts to extreme close-ups of an actual tank. And this was really neat because you don't really see anything. It's all just close-ups. Close-ups and voiceover. You can hear the fear in the family's voice. You can hear the screams. You can't see anything, but you can tell. You know what's happening. The car is being crushed by a giant tank. And then as soon as it's over, as soon as the screaming stops and the tank is gone, it's just gone. And there's the little toy tank. And a little kid comes by and picks it up. Walks away. And they don't really go into detail about how this is happening, but I guess this cult really does have awesome satanic powers. They can make that kind of thing happen. But it doesn't really need to be explained. It's just interesting. Yeah, and it's not a movie that I've really ever heard anybody mention before. I don't know. It's odd. Because it's really good for what it is. You know, you don't think of a good horror movie being rated PG, but they pull it off. And of course, this is PG back in the days when PG actually meant something. And that ending, that creepy ending where you're not quite sure exactly what happened, but you know, where the entire ceremony was all done with children's toys, brought to life, so that when it was over, it would all disappear and just become a playset on a table. So there'd be no evidence. That was clever. It really brought the whole toy thing full circle. Really well done. Oh, this is a long month. Today I watched a movie that isn't really considered a horror movie. In fact, it's nowhere near it. However, I'm still counting it because look at this. It's called Alice. Alice is an adaptation of Alice in Wonderland created by Czech filmmaker Jan Svankmajer. The movie is live action and stop motion. Svankmajer is perhaps most well known for his stop motion animation, and if you've heard of him at all, you've heard of Alice. I know it's not a horror movie and it really shouldn't count for this month, but you know what? I'm going to count it anyway because look at this. You look at that and you tell me that's not from a horror movie. This movie has so much bizarre stuff in it. I mean, it's Alice in Wonderland. If you really think about the story, there's a lot of bizarre stuff in Alice in Wonderland. But Svankmajer just takes it to a completely different place. He did not like any of the current adaptations of Alice in Wonderland because they were too fairy tale-like, too whimsical. He wanted to present the story as an amoral dream. A kind of dream that a person might actually have when they're sleeping. You know, where there is no story, things don't really make sense, stuff just seems to happen. In this movie, Alice's motivations are not known. Her decisions often don't make sense. And there's no real conclusion. Ultimately, nothing happens. The movie is just a 90-minute feast for the eyes. The animation is tremendous. Svankmajer knows what he's doing. if you're into that kind of thing, you cannot look away. For some people, though, I know stop motion animation is considered a fear. Some people just can't stand it. If that's you, stay the hell away from this movie. My version was dubbed, although there's not really much dialogue at all, and all of it is done as narration by a single voice actor who recites the lines that the characters would be saying to each other if they were capable of speech. And perhaps the weirdest thing of all, and that's saying something for a movie like this, is that every time a character speaks, the action is immediately broken up and interrupted by an extreme close-up of lips, of the narrator's lips, describing things or saying the incidental text, the said the white rabbit, that kind of thing. I don't know. It seemed like an odd decision to make.
I certainly hope they like this video. I know I haven't put as much effort into this week as I did last week, but hopefully the audience enjoys it. And I certainly hope I can pull together that last video. It's time I did something good.
Thought Prince Dustpan.